Okay, we'll just give folks a few seconds to join us and then we'll get started. Okay, we've got a short amount of time and a lot of work to do, so we are going to get started. Folks might continue to join us, and that's great. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for what's going to be, I think, a really important conversation. I want to thank our series sponsor, the Job Gym. They've really been a great partner to us over the years for all of our employment needs and just a great group of people to work with. I'm going to turn it over to Amanda Shannon from the Job Gym just to say a few words.
Thanks so much, Dolores. I want to thank Dave Augustine, NRP, Brock University, and Toes Niagara for all your efforts on this project and for joining us today. Job Gym is very fortunate that we get to be co-located with Toes Niagara and have connected with Miriam and her team about this project. To echo Dolores's words from another session, every time Miriam's in the room, I learn something new and different that helps me in the work that I do every day, as well as our organization. So thank you so much for that. The information this project has provided on Niagara's specific insight of the impact of human trafficking in our communities, coupled with the prevention and actionable steps to implement, has helped Job Gym make changes to our programs and services, including things like updating our training curriculum for our job seekers that go through some of our hospitality training. In the hospitality field. So by education and awareness, we can make it more difficult for this issue to exist in our community. So I'm so happy that you were able to join us today and hope that everyone else gets the same kind of information out of this and is able to take some actionable steps to move forward. Thanks so much.
That's great. Thank you, Amanda. Okay, let's introduce our speakers, our presenters. So we have Miriam Kaniza. Miriam is the project coordinator at Toes Niagara, developing and supporting strategic projects for both youth and immigrant women and their families. With over 10 years in business, she focuses on sustainable growth and customer loyalty. She also directs the More Care Seniors Initiative and volunteers extensively, supporting seniors and mentoring women. Previously, she was the head of employee health and benefits at Marsh McLennan in East Africa. Thank you, Miriam, for joining us. We also welcome Dave Augustine. Dave's work is rooted in strategy, innovation, and community impact. As president of AEI and a former mayor of Pelham and Niagara Regional Council, he's led transformative projects, an accredited professional innovation advisor since 2015, and professional fundraiser since 1995. How old are you? Dave has raised millions for charities like the Alzheimer's Society of Niagara and Jillian's Place. He also serves as a director for our Welland Pelham Chamber of Commerce and the Boys and Girls Club of Niagara Foundation. Thank you, Dave, for joining us.
Thank you.
So
Great to
our
be here as the
format,
policy consultant.
yes. So our format for today is going to be just a little different than our previous lunch and learns. We're going to have a presentation by both Miriam and Dave. They're going to present some information, and then we're all going to participate in a discussion around this topic. So you're all going to be able to join in the conversation. What we'll probably do is have you raise your hand. You can see the raised hand function at the bottom of your screen, and that'll be the best way for us to engage you in the conversation. So I'm going to turn it over to both Miriam and Dave. Take it away, guys.
Thanks so much. We really appreciate the opportunity to speak to chamber members and the broader community about the Code of Conduct for Human Trafficking Prevention in the Niagara Region, the project that's a link between Toes Niagara and Brock University, funded by Women and Gender Equity Canada. We also wanted to introduce Emily Moore, who's assisting us here. She's a student at Brock University, and she's helping us coordinate this project and running the slides today. And also we have a representative from the Niagara Regional Police Service who's going to be giving us some more up-to-date stats. You won't be seeing his face because he works in the community and we want to protect him as well. I'll turn it over to Miriam.
Thank you so much, Deb, for that kind introduction. Thank you so much, Dolores, for the collaboration. I call you such an ally on this project. And from my ED, Nyarai Kapsavanu, who is unable to join us today, we send our regards to the chambers. And the fact that you have been at the front, we believe that business involvement, community involvement, and sectoral involvement is the collaborative action that we all need to make Niagara inhospitable to human trafficking. Dave, back to you. And Emily, thank you for making time. Emily is our research assistant, and she has done an amazing job in educating and engaging the community. We thank you, Job Jim, for partnering with us and inviting us on several occasions. Amanda, for inviting us to the Business Network Initiative, where we have continued carrying on the conversation. And to Police, who is also a member on the steering committee, we thank you so much for the involvement and the education and insights that you've given us to have both a diverse and actionable code of conduct. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I think if we can just go to the next slide, Emily, it's the agenda. We're going to talk about why we're here today. We want to understand the issue. We want to talk about the government support and funding and what is the code of conduct, the structure of the code, the signatory commitments, etc. And we are really going to have you involved in some feedback in this session. And there's also going to be time at the end for questions and answers. So thank you very much for that. If we go to the next slide, Emily. This is the United Nations definition on human trafficking. There's Canadian definitions. There's all kinds of definitions. This is about the broadest, and it really helps identify how it is that we are, or why we are talking about this today, and how broad this topic is. Human trafficking is the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of people through force, fraud, or deception with the aim of exploiting them for profit. And what we've learned as well is that it's men, women, children of all ages and from all backgrounds who can become victims of crime, and it occurs in every region of the world. So it's a broad definition of human trafficking, talking about recruitment. Some folks call it grooming as well, because it's really pretending to be a friend of someone and recruiting them in, or maybe it's fraud or deception that's used to say, we have eyes on your family, you have to join us, or we're going to tell them, those kind of things in terms of exploiting. Or even when we're talking, and that's sort of on the sexual exploitation side. And when it comes to labor, there's also that piece as well. Oh, we're going to tell your employer, or we're going to tell your school, or something like that. So this is the broad definition of human trafficking. And it's also under a protocol. More than 150 countries have signed on to the Palma-Monero protocol, and Canada is a signatory to that. So if we can have the next slide, please. So why are we here? Human trafficking in Niagara is a persistent challenge impacting the hospitality and tourism sectors. It's a critical issue, especially because of our proximity to the US border and the thriving hospitality and tourism industry, which creates the environment where sexual and labor exploitation can go unnoticed. We've talked about this when we talk to other chamber members, that sometimes, the real thing about human trafficking is that it thrives in secrecy. If don't tell anybody, those kind of things that you can't tell your parents, you can't tell your loved ones, you can't go to the police because we'll harm you, will hurt you. But with leadership and commitment, businesses, including all the business members who are the Chamber of Commerce, and individuals can be the front line for prevention and protection. And businesses and organizations are the key to prevent human trafficking through prevention, protection, partnership, and prosecution. The next slide, please. Miriam, do you want to do this one?
So on this, understanding the issue, we will invite the police, the Niagara Regional Police Services, to share with us what are the statistics. I remember, Dev, an interesting conversation you had with one of our key community member who said, oh no, human trafficking has been solved, isn't it? Do we still have it? So to make this very important and bring it to reality, however cruel it will be, it will in the end help us to address better. So I will invite the representative from the Human Trafficking Unit of the Niagara Regional Police Services to take us through the statistics and what's happening. Are businesses cooperating? Is the community cooperating? What are you looking up to? How does the court help? Over to you, please. And thank you for making time again.
Thanks for having me. My name is Trevor. I'm a detective in the Human Trafficking Unit with Niagara Regional Police Service. First, I appreciate the steps taken to kind of block my image up there. Not that I want to put up walls, but it's just caution that we use for the safety of survivors and victims because we're out in the public with them. So it's just an extra layer. So I appreciate that. As for the statistics, I can kind of speak in generalities, as our statistics for this year aren't, I don't think they're put in yet. But what I can say is that since the Human Trafficking Unit in Niagara Regional Police Service was formed in 2019, it's almost tripled every year. So for us, it's having building rapport with people that normally wouldn't seek out police to talk to, and kind of the victim center approach that we've taken, where it's not just that we're looking to do a criminal investigation, but we're trying to break people out of the cycle of human trafficking. So working with community supports. So we're seeing a lot more statistics of people coming forward to speak to us, knowing that it's not their story's their story. We're not trying to take a hold of it and go through the kind of criminal process if that's not what they choose. With that being said, kind of going through, I see it says about the along the corridor linking Toronto and Niagara region. So human trafficking is a multi-jurisdictional issue. Us in Niagara, more than half the time we see our victims or survivors linked in Toronto, Durham, all the way to Ottawa, sometimes Quebec. And it does kind of go the trickle effect through the Golden Horseshoe to Niagara, and then as well out to London and Windsor. So there is a lot of statistics that kind of double up because it's the same people that are getting moved from city to city. As far as we talk about sexual exploitation, that's the main kind of cases that we deal with. Not that labor trafficking isn't happening. It's just we're still trying to work on those kind of barriers of wishing to speak with police. Because again, I think Dave mentioned before, again, it could be more threats towards family back in a home country, distrust with police there. There's a lot of steps that kind of go into it. So I would just say from a statistic point, it's just we're working on kind of building those relationships so that we can get people more comfortable to talk to us. And then I just want to kind of go through, it mentions a case from February 2024. Just that was for, it wasn't human trafficking charges that were laid. It was sexual exploitation of minors. It's just so it doesn't kind of count towards the human trafficking. It wasn't, we didn't arrest any traffickers during that project. And then, yeah, so it's, again, we're kind of seeing, again, it's the most vulnerable. We see females, not saying that doesn't happen with males, but that's being reported to us. It's mostly female victims. And it is between, I don't know if it's 11 to 14, but it's 11 through 20s, 30s, 40s. So it's a vast kind of age group. But with being looking at the kind of vulnerabilities of youth, we're trying to get more people to, again, speak with us. So we're engaging, doing presentations at group homes, and really working with our missing person coordinator to try to mend those relationships. Because again, it could be habitual runaways. that are vulnerable, so that we want to have a chance to talk to them, to give them the opportunity to speak with us on that it's not just a criminal process, that we can help them, give them the supports or connect them with others. So kind of, I went through a little stats and kind of rambled on about what we're doing, but I'll leave it there, and then I'm be happy to answer any questions that I can after.
Thank you so much for that presentation, and thank you again for your involvement and insight and everything around that. It is unfortunate that you still are dealing with such cases. We would think ideally that with the business involvement and the commitment to make Niagara safe, we shouldn't have these cases happening and runaways and all that. But yeah, let Dev take us through what it means for us to get involved. Over to you, Dev.
Thanks so much. And I think the piece about involvement and engagement, why are we doing this? Why do we want folks to get involved in this? And this is the pitch we made just the other week to tourism operators in Niagara and Niagara Falls. 87% of consumers say that they would avoid a business linked to unethical practices. And obviously human trafficking is unethical. And if there was ever a business that was subjected to this, or it occurred at their facility, they would face a huge negative consequences as a result of those practices. There's also the legal consequences and employee exposure. So there could be legal elements where there's neglect to prevent trafficking, and employees might be exposed to human trafficking and need counseling to help overcome that. There's social and economic harm. And this is a big number, 150 billion annually. That's essentially black market money that isn't going into the economy. Folks do try to money launder it, whether it's at banks, financial institutions, or in gambling. But that's a huge economic harm. And then in terms of undermining the social harm of individuals and the trauma that they face, and also the harm locally as well. Again, if there's these cases and people say, oh, I heard about all those cases in Niagara, let's say, or wherever, is it safe to go there, right? And then there's risk and safety issues, for 13 million tourists that are appearing annually, making a high risk area. We have to work to prevent human trafficking for our visitors and as well as for our residents. So I think the next thing we'd like to do is maybe get some participation before we go to this government commitment slide. Emily, we were hoping to get folks engaged and kind of do a little bit of a question to them, and I'll turn it over to Miriam for that question.
You put me on the spot here. Thank you very much, though. We want you to use the chat. There is something in the toolbar that has a chat, and we just wanted to ask a food for thought, really. Do not, and usually when we're starting these conversations, Dolores, sorry, I didn't give you the disclaimer. We want to emphasize that your safety and your peace of mind is our priority. If you feel the conversation we are having triggers you or is something that does not put you in a good place, you're free to just leave your contribution and leave for your safety. Or Emily will put up a number that you can call if you think you need to further speak to somebody. We use the number, the 24-hour hotline human trafficking number for the Canadian Centre to End Human Trafficking if you need to reach out for further help. That said, we want you to think, pause and think. If you found out, if you noticed, are you able to notice that someone is in danger of human trafficking? What is that will make you feel that I think Mariam is having a problem? And if you're able to tell, what would you do? If you want to give us something in the chat room, I would call, I would run, I would support them, I will call this organization, I've had this story. That will be great. We will let that sink in, think about it, and let us know after in the chat room if you know how to identify that, oh, the little boy down the street or in that house seems to have a problem. Or my daughter told me this, and from what I see, there is something unusual. And what should I do? What do you do? Do you go back to the teacher? Do you go to police who is on the call today? Do you call the center? What do you do? Over to you, Deb.
Thanks so much. I hope the for the question. Thanks. I hope the chat's open. I'm not sure that it is. So there we go. Emily's posted something. I hope folks can see that. And it's similar to the idea of, and as we talk about this, you know, you see a bag at the airport that's unattended. What do? We know what to do because we've been conditioned to think that way and to do that. Or if we hear something, we would, you know, we know what to do. So we're hearing folks here. Folks can now say that they are part of the chat. So one person says report to the authorities right away. And another person says, that's the reason why I'm here, because I want to learn, especially examples that don't fall into this. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Again, not knowing enough to look for those kind of elements. And we can talk about that. Yeah, certainly if it's an emergency, you call the police. If it's a suspicion, you can call the police, not the 911 number, but the non-emergency police number. Some folks, they might suspect something maybe at their workplace or maybe with a friend. They can also call Crime Stoppers. And I would ask Miriam or Emily to put the Crime Stoppers number in and the police non-emergency number in. Crime Stoppers will allow you to remain anonymous. So somebody, let's say, working at a hotel or motel and says, geez, there's something going on there. I don't feel comfortable getting involved. You can call Crime Stoppers and that will eventually get its way to the police as well. And they will review it. So, and Trevor, is there anything else you want to add to that from a Niagara Regional Police and OPP perspective to answer that question?
Yeah, I think, again, Crime Stoppers is a good tip. And a lot of what we talk is just gut feelings and red flags. So us as detectives in our unit, we would much rather have a conversation with you than you wishing you reported something. So that can be, again, like through the non-emergency line. We can even do online reporting. All that stuff gets put through our work queue. So like our unit only has 4 people. So one of us reads every report that comes through. So I know there's kind of, you don't want it to kind of just said and then it goes into the abyss. Like everything that says human trafficking that gets reported to the police, we read. So yeah, I would always say, yeah, if you got a gut feeling, it's way better reaching out. And again, it doesn't have to be an emergency and have cruisers show up, but it could be a conversation. Just put an online report in or one of the other avenues, and then we can always follow up.
That's great. Thanks so much, Trevor. And I think there's some questions in the chat about what type of things people might be looking for or a suspicion that you know, they might have. Any suggestions on that? Like if they see something, or what have folks called you about and actually turned into this is human trafficking? Maybe just for a couple seconds on that, Trevor.
Yeah, no problem. So it's similar to even some of the domestic violence stuff we see. I'll give a couple quick scenarios.
Perfect.
So we speak to even kind of hospital staff or staff even with Ontario Works. It could be something that you see like a controlling, like I said, I speak in, the majority of our victims are female, so I do kind of come at it that way. It could be if they don't hold their own documents. So if they show up to a hospital and the guy claiming to be their boyfriend is holding her phone, health card, all the documents, won't remove themselves. That's a red flag, kind of gut feeling. Nurses they're fantastic that we work with, where they'll try to separate that female and work with it that way. It could be, we get a lot of calls from parents, and sometimes it could be going through a bit of a crisis situation, and again, we will kind of walk them through when the most appropriate time is. Because obviously we want to deal with the crisis situation first, whether it's mental health. And in that point, we can have a sit down. We've had plenty of times where we've ended up in a dining room of a concerned family and just kind of talk through. And what we see is kind of instant debt. I know that I've spoken to you guys before about that. And kind of some people just assume that it might be the drug subculture where they owe money for drugs. Well, that could easily be a $30 lipstick from a store in a mall that someone just bought them, and that maybe they didn't have allowance money or money from their parents and they really wanted it, and get themselves kind of in a pickle that way. And then it could be the social media side where, like, I'll pay for this, but I want your number, your Snapchat, kind of go down that line, and then they feel kind of stuck, maybe a bit embarrassed, and then it doesn't get addressed. We've had kind of group of high school girls where their friends are kind of had that gut feeling. Had friends maybe got nails done every week when they don't have any money for that, or they end up with a cell phone or an extra cell phone, or they're starting to maybe go to parties outside the region. All these are kind of red flags. And again, maybe it could just be partying. It could just be a new phone. But it's kind of those gut feelings and red flags that maybe something's a bit up. And that's where, again, we're happy to kind of help out. And it doesn't have to be a big kind of criminal investigation side. It could be some awareness and some best practices. So I hope that kind of shed light on a little bit of it.
Definitely it does. And giving those examples for folks, and let's see if folks in the chat can comment on that, and probably allows us to really think about other scenarios, or if a scenario comes up, it'll tweak that in our brain to say, is something here, and who should I call? So let's move on quickly to the next. Time marches on here in our lunch and learn. If we can move to the next slide. So there is a government commitment to both criminalize human trafficking starting back in 2002, and put some funding aside, some large funding, 57 million in 2019, additional funding in 2021. And that's where this project got some funding from Wage Canada, as I mentioned earlier. And we'll talk about that in a sec, but the pieces that the federal government is doing, because it's a part of the criminal code, they are continuing to do things like this Bill S-211 to enact fighting against forced labor and child labor in supply chains, and trying to amend the Customs Act to make that happen. So that's been presented into law. If we can go to the next slide, please. So this is the Code of Conduct. It's funded, as I mentioned, by Wage and Gender Equity Canada, developed by TOES Niagara in partnership with Brock University. Miriam mentioned that we have collaboration among partners, both and a steering committee. So it's with the hospitality and tourism agencies, educational institutions, law enforcement like NRPS and Border Security, local government, Niagara, and local municipalities. And its purpose is to put in place a code to prevent human trafficking in the hospitality and tourism industry in the Niagara Peninsula, and through education, awareness of human trafficking, and provide the resources, including prevention strategies. So this is really a call to action to make Niagara inhospitable to human trafficking. We want to be hospitable for everyone else, but not for human traffickers. And also to be a leader. If we can do this here in Niagara, where we are a showcase to the world, can we also take it and include it in other areas of the country that have significant hospitality and tourism sectors? We can go to the next slide, please. Here's the formulation for the code. So there was that funding back in 2023, getting things set up. We did form a steering committee, and you'll see we have the road here. So the key important points on the road is that we do have that formation of the steering committee with cross sectors involved in this. And then we also have a draft code that we presented to that steering committee, made some changes, and now we're going out to the community. So you see the blue dot and the green dot, sector feedback that we're getting from the various sectors right now, and the community feedback. And this lunch and learn is part of that. We're hoping to have a final draft in this spring that we might present to the community and get even additional feedback, but also more importantly, signatories. If we can go to the next slide. The structure of the code, of course, executive summary, background, mission, etc. But there are guidelines and responsibilities that signatories, people, organizations, businesses, groups like a Chamber of Commerce, the tourism associations, municipalities would sign on to. So there's collective responsibilities, steering committee responsibilities, and then each sector has its own responsibilities. There's a QR code there, or you can go to TOWS-Niagara/code to download that code. We'll give you 30 seconds to take a picture of that and use your phone, or go to that website. For those that have time to do this, please. Emily's also put it in the chat that you can look at that code and see it there, and we are looking for feedback on that. Maybe we can go to the next slide. So the Code of Conduct does have a vision for a safe community. That's the overall vision. And as I mentioned, to make Niagara inhospitable to human trafficking is sort of the mission, and also that Niagara is known as a leader fighting against human trafficking. Gender-based analysis is part of everything we do, and that's because, as Trevor mentioned, the majority of the clients, victims, survivors of human trafficking are female. So we always want to look at it through that lens. And the goals: deter human traffickers from operating in Niagara, cut the demand for human trafficking in Niagara, protect survivors, and also public and community proactively working to prevent human trafficking. Go to the next slide, please. And the signatory commitments, I'll keep going on this, and then Miriam can lead us through the exercise. So each signatory, each organization, each business that's going to be signing on to this will sign on and say, we will work to prevent it for sexual and labor exploitation, protecting vulnerable groups, prioritizing survivor protection and the dignity, rights, and safety of survivors, working to maintain and enhance the best practices for to combat human trafficking, policy development and maintaining policies within each organization, collaborating with others because we know there's strength in numbers, and supporting witnesses, and finally, evaluation and improvement. So maintaining a steering committee to evaluate these efforts and continue. We know that the traffickers continue to change what they're doing, and we have to be as nimble as they are and do it across the sector so that we can keep up with them and prevent human trafficking in Niagara. Next slide, please, and turning it over to Miriam.
Thank you so much, Dev, for giving the perspective. So Dev has shared with us, of course, we're not going to pair you into groups because of the timeline that we have, but we want you to scan the QR code. I'll give you a minute. When you scan the code, it has a section for demography. Just tell us how you identify yourself and which city in the region you identify with. Thank you so much, Emily. She has put for us the survey there. And in these first statements, we just want to see from what Dev has shared, do you think these mission, vision, and goals are going to help us to achieve a safe community? And in terms of the commitment, we have talked about prevention. It's very important. We've talked about survivor protection, and we are not missing this because the police have told us that the approach being used right now is ahead and in front, and importantly, to prosecute. They want to protect the survivors or the victims. And then we're talking about best practices. Individuals, I'm happy that Job Jim has mentioned that they're already doing some of this work. So Job Jim will share with other employment agencies of what they're doing, how it has helped, and we will highlight that. And then we also talked about the steering committee. Do you think these commitments are going to be sufficient or otherwise? So Emily, tell us, what are the questions we're supposed to answer?
Okay, so question 1, how well do you feel the Code of Conduct vision, mission, and goals on page 4 will help in the prevention of human trafficking in the Niagara region? So we ask you kindly to rate that on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest. And then question 2, Under the Code of Conduct statement on page 6, what signatory commitments might be missing that would make the Code of Conduct more effective? So there's 2 options: I'm satisfied as it is written, or there's an option for you to give feedback.
Thank you so much. When you're done, if you have a question around it, use the chat room, raise your hand. We will open it up, such that it is a conversation. Like we said, this is going to be an approach for the community for involvement, other than laying out kind of rules or regulations or anything like that. It's a collaborative effort and a hand-holding effort in there. Okay, as you fill that in, we will go to the commitments. Dev, we'll go to the next slide. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks so much. And those at home, if you need to, that are watching this recording of this, you can stop it, go back and take the time you need to do that. Collective responsibility. So again, I mentioned that all signatories would be signing on for these collective responsibilities. So that includes mandatory training of staff, public awareness when it comes to displaying materials and publicity, support services and victim assistance. So when that call is made to the police, that there's somewhere that a victim can go, and protecting the survivors, and clear referrals for that process. Safe reporting and support of staff who report. So a commitment from a signatory to say, if a staff person sees something, some of the things like the nurses that Trevor was talking about, that there is that commitment from the organization that signs on to say, we'll support the nurse in that activity because he or she had those suspicions. Monitoring and evaluation. So an oversight committee or a health and safety committee addition. Many organizations have that joint health and safety. Can this be added to their work, or set up a specific oversight committee to kind of look at everything within their organization if they're small and say, how can we work to do this? And TOS Niagara and Brock University are here to assist with this. Annual review of policies and protocols and reporting those efforts to the steering committee. And then suppliers and partners, encouraging suppliers and partners to follow the code. So through all of this, especially when it comes to some of the smaller organizations, TOS Niagara, Brock University are here to hold your hand with those signatory organizations. Some of the larger ones, like the Hilton Hotel, etc., they often have from their network of hoteliers many of the supports that are required in terms of the training of staff and some of the policy work. So we're actually going to be borrowing. They're being very generous. We're going to borrow from them so that we can train others to know what to look for when somebody comes to the front desk, or a valet, or when it comes to cleaning the room, etc. Can we have the next slide? And I think Miriam or Emily's going to lead us through this.
So thank you very much. Thank you so much, Dev. There are 6, just to remember, quickly to remember, and the question is going to be around that. So somebody said, oh, I'm here for training. Fantastic. We want all businesses to be able to train their staff, especially front client-facing staff. That's one responsibility. We want resource distribution. That's why we had the question, which number do I call? Where is it? How easily is it accessible? Is it in the lobby? Is it on the screen? Where can I find it? Is it in the bathroom or behind my door? Or is it on the bed? Wherever. I've stopped seeing what Emily is sharing. I don't know if it's my side. Now I can. One slide. Thank you. Thank you so much. We're talking about supporting. Did you know that some victims do not want to work with police? I'm sorry, police, I know you're on the call, but they do not want because they are not documented. Will businesses have proper protocol to hand over a victim with their consent? For example, I don't want to go to the police, but I can go to victim services, or I can go to YWCA, or I can go to the organizations that we are working with. So our question is, Emily, over to you.
Thank you. So question 3 is, which of the following Code of Conduct collective responsibilities and general guidelines on pages 9 and 10 do you believe will be the most effective in addressing human trafficking? So mandatory training, resource distribution and public awareness, support services and victim assistance, safe reporting procedures, monitoring and evaluation, suppliers and partner policies, And there's another option there for more feedback as well.
Okay, 2 minutes for people to fill that in, Dev, before you go ahead. Thank you, Amanda. And Emily is collecting all the feedback in the chat. Emily, please remember to copy the chart and we take that feedback to the steering committee. One
We
more
have someone in
minute
the
for
chat
people to fill in.
sorry, we have someone in the chat saying support services and victim assistance. So that's great. Thank you for that. If we might go to the next slide, just thinking about time, we want to leave enough time for questions and answers. The priority sectors. So I mentioned earlier that there were 5 different sectors that were involved in this. Of course, everything is surrounding the hospitality and tourism sector and those industries, and that not only includes the large hotels or the motels on Lundy's Lane in Niagara Falls, or hotels, motels around the region, but it also includes things like cottages on Lake Erie or elsewhere, or it includes Airbnbs, right? So it's a broad sector in terms of hospitality and tourism. And so we want to make sure that we surround that sector and get all the involvement. So it includes also schools and education. So the high schools, the boards of education, we're hoping to have them involved and include something in making sure that it's there in curriculum, but also that staff are trained if they see some youth coming to school and there's certain issues, or universities and colleges where it comes to orientation, and also in the hospitality tourism sector. We heard Amanda earlier saying that they're doing it when they're training folks going into work in those hospitality and tourism sectors. Local government is there, so whether it's an EMS worker, ambulance worker, or whether it's a bylaw officer that's going and inspecting Airbnbs or cottages, short-term rentals, whether it's the firefighters, or even folks at the libraries, right? And where there might be something going on there and they notice something. Law enforcement obviously includes the Niagara Regional Police Service, the Ontario Provincial Police, Border Services, the RCMP, but other allied law enforcement agencies, and the community agencies is a huge, broad area. So that includes, as some of the organizations that Miriam spoke about earlier, the YWCA, Victim Services, the women's shelters, and many, many, many others that are serving in this area. It could be food banks as well, right? So it could be the community cares, etc. So it's a broad brush that we're looking at these sectors to be involved in this, and really a holistic approach to the collaboration and partnerships that we're trying to achieve when it comes to supporting those that are in the hospitality and tourism sector and getting dragged into and involved in human trafficking. If we can go to the next slide, Miriam.
Thank you so much, Dev. And one question, we had a meeting where one of the sectors asked, if it's for the hospitality and tourism industry, why are you at this sector? I'll not mention the sector because we are collecting feedback anonymously. And you too might ask, so why are you involving education, police, and everything else? And the simple answer is, we want to give assurance to the tourism sector that they are not standing alone. The hotel is going to feel comfortable knowing that Victim Services has been approached and has made a commitment to support them in case they call them. We want to make a commitment that the police is at the front and they have made a commitment. They have a unit. They will support them if they identify trackers, and then they will hand over back to them, or if they have victims. And police is saying we are victim-centered as well. So we trusted that working in silos is not going to be helpful. We will not get a safe community. But if we put tourism in the middle and surround it with all the sectors saying we are protecting you and working with you, by the time we get another mandate to work with other sectors, this one sector will be really supported, and it will be able to look at or aim to achieve a safe community. And so we want you to tell us, how do you feel that these will be sufficient? I'll hand over to Emily to tell us what to answer. Emily, over to you.
Thank you. Okay, so our last 3 questions for the survey. The first one is, do you feel that all relevant sectors have been included? So there's 3 options: yes, mostly, or no. Question 5, how well do you feel the Code of Conduct will promote strong collaboration and accountability among key sectors, noted above in their effort to make Niagara inhospitable to human traffickers. So similar to the first question, we're asking you to rate that on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest. And then lastly, is there anything else you would like to share with the steering committee as it relates to the code of conduct?
Thank you so much, Emily. And the good thing, when you click no to the fact that the sectors are not comprehensive enough, you'll be given an option to let us know what is that other sector that you have mentioned. One of the feedback we got lately, like Dave has mentioned already, money laundering happening somewhere. So some people have proposed the involvement of the church, the involvement of religious leaders, the involvement of the banking institutions. And we will take that back to the steering committee. 5 mostly could use more advocates. Oh, great. Yes, Dev.
I would just say that, Trevor used the example today in this webinar about the health sector, right? Nurses and those in the emergency department. So maybe that's something that we should add as well. So that's some great feedback. I think if we go to the next slide. So the next slide is sort of next steps, and then we get into the questions and answers. So we are doing these community feedback sessions. We're presenting to chambers of commerce. We're presenting to organizations across Niagara, charitable organizations, service club organizations, etc. We did have an online session on January 28th that you can find a link on the TOES Niagara website, toesniagara.ca. We are soliciting feedback ongoing from the various sectors and making improvements to the code so that we can present that draft code based on community and sector feedback this spring. So let's move to the next slide. And here is a picture of the steering committee. And I think there's additional members that weren't there to be there, but we appreciate their dedication. And we're going to now open it up with about 10 minutes or so left to questions that folks might have on the call. And we'll hope to provide answers. And the way they do that, go ahead, Miriam.
Oh, sorry about that. There is something in the chat room. Maybe Karen can share or unmute herself. I don't know if Dolores can let us know if somebody can mute themselves to say something. Are they able to?
Okay, and so who did you want? Who was the person?
Or
Is
if
it-
she's
There's
comfortable
Karen
though,
there.
yeah, that mostly, but some sectors are missing. We can build a conversation, or she can let us know whether in the chat room or unmute and share. What
Okay.
else can we involve? Yes, thank you.
Okay, we'll allow her to talk. So Karen, if you feel comfortable sharing.
Can you hear
go
me
ahead.
okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
I said what I'm going to say. I already submitted in the survey like several weeks ago when it first came across my desk. But I'm a realtor in Niagara, and my thoughts were just, if that many are being trafficked via the corridor from Toronto to Niagara, they need to stop and get gas. They need to stop and eat, and you have the people in the restaurants and the fast food places that would see them coming through in cars. They'd have to stop at gas stations, whereas realtors, there's over 1,500 of us. We're all over the city all day. We're in restaurants, we're getting gas, we're dealing with people who want to buy properties to set up Airbnbs. So we would be, I just thought that we would be a good sector as well as restaurants.
Thank you so much. That is a great observation. Thank you so much, Karen.
You're welcome.
Are there any?
Yeah, thanks, Karen. We really appreciate that, and we have had some discussions with realtors, but we'll add that to the list to include. Are there others on the call that have any questions about this or other observations like Karen did, and want to either speak or put it into the chat, and we can raise that? We do have a question here.
Yeah.
Let me read this. If we are concerned that someone is being trafficked by the person they are with, should we? I think this is a question for you, Trevor. Should we ask if they are okay, or to better gauge our concern, or do we not speak to the potential victim at all and instead just let it go and call the police or Crime Stoppers? So a bit of a kind of hypothetical question there, Trevor, if you can see that, and maybe you can get back to us on that so that to answer that question.
Yeah, for that question, I'd say it all, everything comes down to safety, right? So much like even when talking in the hospitality industry, we don't want valets or front desk people at hotels or motels putting themselves at risk either. So I'd say in this, if you think it's more of an emergency, you could just like call 911, and it can kind of get triaged that way. Or it could be, again, like being an advocate for it and the gut feeling and documenting it. But again, if the hypothetical is that you think that you see someone right there and maybe you got a license plate or the last known location, maybe you could pass that along to police if I'd say maybe that's the best practice. I'd refrain from approaching yourself just for your own safety.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much, Trevor. Safety is top of mind for the person who's observing this, but also for the victim of, or the potential victim of human trafficking. We have another question here. Thanks for that, Trevor. We have another question here. How does a person become involved on being in the committee if someone wants to be more involved in helping this cause? Miriam, that one's for you.
Thank you very much. You can reach us via the email that Emily will just share. Oh, it's on the screen, info@tosniagara.ca. You're more than welcome. We have different ways in which you can participate. You might not be on the committee per se, but we are getting into another phase of reaching out to different organizations and getting organizations to commit. We do not have enough hands to do that. So we will certainly find a way for you to come on board.
And just to add to that, Miriam, and build on it, we had some of our facilitators, so members of the CFUW, the Canadian University, the Canadian Federation of University Women, came forward when they saw something in the newspaper about it and wanted to become involved, and they're very actively involved in it. So they don't serve specifically on the committee, the steering committee, and there may be a role for them doing that in the future, but they're quite involved in some of the training and the community outreach. So there's always a role for someone. So please reach out to the info@tosniagara.ca website. We have another one here about TOS Niagara recruiting new board members. Somebody wants to be involved in the in this. Going to turn that over to you, Miriam, as well.
Thank you so much. I will refer to the same email, and like I said, our ED Niagara Kapsavanu is very open to more diverse and inclusive involvement to our board, and that's the only way we can support the communities that we work with. Of course, there are procedures for somebody to be a board member involving the current board membership and the involvement there. So kindly reach out to us and we'll be sure to continue with the conversation. And Emily, if you have the flyer near you, if you do not, I'm not putting you in spot, you cannot, but you can display the reporting flyer that we usually share with the individuals in terms of the event. Dev, we have a hand raising and I think we have very few minutes, maybe just to let you know.
Yeah, let's do this. Let's do this one if that's okay. Dolores, someone has their hand raised for a question. Amanda?
Yes, thank you.
Want to
so
ask that
much.
question if you're comfortable doing that? All right, great, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Great presentation. Thank you so much. I have a question and a couple of statements maybe. I have heard from some businesses that they want to be part of this movement, but there's also the concern about balancing that with business marketing and things and not wanting to deter people from coming to their establishments or to Niagara for fear of their personal safety. So I'm just wondering if your organization is going to be working with those hospitality groups to help them develop messaging that shows that the company's being proactive in creating a safe environment that's still welcoming people in without scaring them, just so they can help continue to spread the word, but also, you know, not do any damage to their businesses.
Right, right. All right, thanks so much, Amanda. So it does harken back to the presentation that we gave to the to a tourism organization a group of tourism operators, very, very involved in this case in the Niagara Falls area. And they were they very much wanted to be involved in this. They recognized that there's the potential of something negative happening, and it would in fact impact the entire sector. And they asked the question, for example, could we put a sticker on our door and in a proactive, positive way to say that we are members of, or signatories to the code of conduct? Could we promote it somehow? Could we? And those are all the things that we don't have the answer right now, but we're hoping that the steering committee would work to that. The idea is that, and this goes back to a conversation we actually had with some of the MPs that helped with the funding, that this is a positive thing. We want to be seen as a leader, and if we continue to, or if folks want to hide it, it does continue to harbor and grow in secrecy, right? So one of the best cleaning agents is light. Let's bring it out to the light. Let's shine a light on the great work that we're doing across Niagara, and really making the commitment to making Niagara safe for all, which includes curtailing and preventing human trafficking. So that's how we're kind of approaching it in a very positive way, as opposed to a negative way. So it is obviously a negative issue. It impacts people directly, but there is a positive way to deal with it, and that's the way that the tourism operators are saying that we should do it, and that's the way that we're going to be doing this with the work that we're doing. I hope that answers your question.
That's amazing. Thank you. And I just had a couple other things to kind of put out there as well, which I'm sure your committee's already thought about this. In terms of, everybody that is going to be joining in to support this program will be talking to their clients, their customers, their students, their kids. Has there been any thought given as to how individuals can have conversations with those groups to educate them without causing harm or trauma or making them fearful about this? And then the other thing is, I think there's a lot of stereotypes about what human trafficking looks like. We've been influenced by TV, media, all of that stuff. So we kind of have a thing in our head on what it looks like, but in fact, it happens in many different ways. So some education and awareness about maybe some of the different scenarios that might occur, maybe some case studies that don't share any personal information that would be identifying for the people involved. And then I think some specific information or details on how to identify some of those flags that we should be looking for. I know there were some mentioned today, but I wonder if something more comprehensive will be easier for people to work with so that they can truly engage with the project.
That's amazing. Thank you very much for those three distinct and very important questions. I don't know if we have the time to address them all. Certainly the training piece will be part of that, and part of it is educating the public as well, what to look for. Miriam, can you handle the first couple of questions there in like 30 seconds? Because I know we're coming up to the time, and Dolores wants to, I'm sure, wrap this up by 1. Miriam, can you address those first questions?
Yes, we are comfortable that in developing the training, and thank you so much, Amanda, in developing the training for different categories of people, we are influenced by a curriculum developer, but we're also influenced by a gender-based analysis who will handle the trauma element of how the training should be done. And there will be disclaimers to make sure that once a person is not comfortable, we have a referral process for them to have their conversation in a comfortable place. The messaging is going to be directed from the community, and through the steering committee, there is a PR committee that will make sure that the message is not scaring to the client, but welcoming. We have already received a small group from the tourism sector that is helping us to use the right language that is acceptable to the members. And the last one, Dev, is that the purpose for this particular call and training was not to give you the detail of signs and what to look out for, but to hear your feedback on what we should put in this code, such that when we bring the signs and what to do, we are informed by what you've shared today. Thank you so much.
Maybe we can do that thanks, Mary. Maybe we can do that in another lunch and learn, Dolores.
I was just
turn it back to
that.
you.
Yeah,
perfect.
absolutely.
Turn it back to you, please.
Thank you so much, Miriam and Dave and Emily. So it's great information, great interaction with our attendees. Thank you, everyone. I think we will have to do a follow-up And so we'll plan for that. But thanks to everybody who's joined us this afternoon in this very important conversation. Just want to let you know that our next session takes place on March 18th. And it'll be an employer-focused session on considerations and legalities of criminal record job requirements, understanding how to read various background checks, and the Fair Chances Coalition program. So another interesting conversation. Thank you everyone for joining us. Have a great afternoon and stay warm. Bye-bye, folks.
Thanks so much. Thanks to Trevor from the Niagara Regional Police Service as
Absolutely.
well, and
Sorry,
Amanda
Trevor.
from Job Gym for supporting these lunch and learns. Thanks so much, all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.